We have another great take from Thomas Sowell. We will also hear from J.D. Vance.
I do think that there is a very serious chance that we are doomed because we have institutions for people in pursuing their interests are destroying the larger interests of the whole society.
Socialists.
These people who are coming around shooting people and calling them fascists and so on, these people are so ignorant that they don't even know what the fascists are doing. Charles Kirk went around talking to people, trying to convince them. Fascists don't do that. Fascists shoot people.
That's prophetic and so unbelievably sad. That video obviously took place before Charlie Kirk sadly lost his life. So,
what is your definition of socialism?
Well, in the theoretical, the abstract, or the practical?
Take your pick.
So socialism, as written by Marx, is when the workers own the means of production.
Exactly.
In the actual practical, it's when a small group of very powerful, pernicious people are able to control the rest of the population under the guise of helping the many, when in reality it helps the few, and you get dictatorship, murder, and slaughter, and the revolution never actually comes.
Okay. And so it's the person who kills him, thinking that he's a fascist, who is himself a fascist, and the opposite of the man he's murdering. I don't think it's coincidence. Supposedly, this was a scholarship.
At this point, Thomas Sowell is not just an intellectual, not just the greatest philosopher possibly in American history, but now he's an outright soothsayer.
Student, but you have an intolerant universities are the norms. People who go around trying to give talks on universities, and there are many others, and they're kept from doing so by mobs. Professors who have spent a lifetime studying some subject in great depth, like Stephen Thurstrom at Harvard, who was editor of the American ethnic group encyclopedia. He had to stop teaching because people were making it impossible for him. And if you look at the history of what these people have been doing, and some of that history is in my book from 30 years ago, Inside American Education. It's horrifying.
Tom, may I take a stab at cheering you up a little?
I've read a lot of Thomas Sowell books, but I haven't read that one yet. So if you have read it, let me know what it says in the comments.
It's a monumental task, but go ahead.
All right. So we've already talked about the Trump administration. Makes me a little queasy because it feels to me as though they're going at some of these universities with a sledgehammer. Your view is let them do it. But the DEI infrastructure has been very substantially dismantled.
Or renamed.
Well, all right. But at least there's some kind of visible attempt to...
What percentage of the people who are in that are no longer in that? I no longer have a job.
Well, I know at the University of Texas, of course, the short answer is I don't know. And I'm sure that university administrators, their impulse is to reshuffle people around. But I know at the University of Texas, the Texas legislature made DEI illegal and required the university to fire these people and then held hearings to make sure that university administrators were doing so. So there's at least one case where the legislature, which is in charge of a great public institution, said enough of this and seems to have done so with real rigor. So there's one case.
And I think Florida as well.
Florida as well, correct.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Let's see what J.D. Vance said on Joe Rogan's podcast about socialism. It says here, again, we're also talking about Charlie Kirk. said on Joe Rogan that unless young people are able to afford life again and be able to afford a home, they will choose socialism and we will become a socialist country.
I think that their ideas are crazy, and I think that you're right. They will lead to a very totalitarian place. I'm not defending a single thing that they say, particularly their hatred of ice cream. What I am saying is, and maybe this is just
They're not following Joe Biden at all if they hate ice cream.
sort of the way my mind works. I tend to be a little bit more empathetic. Why are young people attracted to socialism in 21st century America? One of the best interviews that Charlie Kirk ever gave, it was right before he died. It was an episode that he did with Tucker Carlson where he talked about the fact that if you don't give young people a stake, if you don't give them ownership, if you don't give them a sense of the American dream and of possibility in the future, they're going to become socialists. Like if you have a zero-sum environment for a 25-year-old in this country, they're going to start to say the only way for me to get anything is to take away from somebody else. So we have to get away from like the zero-sum thinking. I think that's like the root cause of this. But I also think that, look, we've ran an experiment in the United States of America. And, I think that we have undone that experiment, taken it a different direction in the Trump administration, where ship all the factories overseas and let low-wage foreigners make our stuff. That was a bad deal for American workers. Again, it takes a long time to reverse that trend, but I think it's one of the best parts of Trump administration policy is you do see that trend starting to reverse. This idea that nobody should own anything, we should all become renters, whereas what we're trying to do is lower interest rates. You actually have seen housing costs stabilize in the country over the last year and a half, frankly, because of immigration. We had way too many people going after way too many homes. You close the border. This is one of the reasons why rents and housing costs have stabilized a little bit. So I think that unless...
Also because the government is not printing huge sums of money like it did over COVID, right? That creates malinvestment and inflation.
You go down that pathway of allowing young Americans to own something, socialism is the inevitable outcome. Do I think that's good? No. But I really do worry, and I see this, frankly, more in my own party than I do on the other side. There is this revulsion to socialism that's totally justified without enough thinking about how did we get here in the first place.
Right.
And if we don't fix that, and I would say if we don't get back to a more Christian sort of understanding of economics, socialism is the alternative. Like that is where this goes.
Well,
if people don't
think
own
the game
anything,
is rigged.
exactly.
Yeah.
And in some ways, Joe, the game is rigged.
Yes.
Yes. If
It's been rigged for millennials since the 07, 08 crisis and the bailouts, the completely unnecessary bailouts, which created more monopolies and more oligopolies in this country. That's what they do. The same thing happened with Hoover and FDR, a century prior. So bailouts are a failure.
if you look at, again, I think so much of housing because, this happened, I think it was during the presidential campaign, maybe it was right before. But I was talking to some family members over Thanksgiving and, just a sort of a younger friend of my wife's. They were like 5 or 6 years behind us. They were just about to get married. And this young woman, successful engineer, makes a higher salary than most Americans. She just sort of like tossed out there that, when her parents' generation was coming up, it was like possible to own a house and to raise a family and not be worried that much about things. And my thought was, okay, you're an engineer. You make way more money than 75% of people your age, maybe 90% of people your age. And you think that it is like this ridiculous, unachievable objective to have literally what your parents had, which is a decent job, a nice house, and a safe place. Like at that same dinner, like another friend of my wife's was talking about this. And he, South Indian family, grew up, his parents immigrated. He was born and raised in San Diego. And he was like, when I was growing up in Oceanside, this is like a suburb of San Diego where a lot of Marines live in Oceanside. It's close to Camp Pendleton. So when I was growing up, all of the kids that I played with, that I rode bikes with, that I was, playing street hockey with and football with, all of those kids were the sons of enlisted Marines in Oceanside, California. And then we went and looked at Oceanside, California rents. Again, this is a couple years ago. Rents and
housing's gotten significantly more expensive, but we bailed it all out. We bailed it out, which led to, first we had an intentional bubble that the government created in the 2000s. The Paul Krugmans of the world fully supported that, and of course that bubble crashed. Study monetarist economics, study Austrian economics, and you'll understand those things well. I'm sure a lot of my listeners already had. But yeah, you can watch the rest of that podcast on Joe Rogan. It's great. This lady, I love this lady. She's great. She's been out there for a number of years now, criticizing socialism and explaining that you have a major economic calculation problem with socialism because there's no prices. You don't know what anything should cost. In abolishing the private ownership for production of goods, socialism abolishes the market for them and makes it impossible for market prices to emerge and for costs of production to be computed, thus impairing the profit and loss mechanism. Without profit and losses, producers have no compass guiding them through production choices.
Socialism doesn't work. It didn't work in the Soviet Union, it didn't work in China, it didn't work in North Korea, it didn't work in Cuba, doesn't work in Venezuela, it wouldn't work in Mars. Because the way it is structured goes against human nature. It depends on humans not having rational behaviors for their own well-being. Socialism.
It doesn't work. Cuba's awful. I saw a video a while back of them of somebody selling meat out of the back of an ambulance. Where are they getting the meat from? Scott Jennings delivers a warning about the future of the Democrat Party that hit the CNN panel like a thunderclap. The Democrat establishment may not realize it yet, but Jennings says they've already lost the war to the socialist wing. And if you've seen the polls, it shows 60% of Democrats favor socialism. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Either the Democrats are going to get absolute power and destroy us, or moderates are going to move to the right and say, nah, I prefer my economic freedom. I prefer to being able to go to the store and buy a candy bar without having to get the state involved. But you don't get to do that, even in democratic socialism. The state gets to vote on whether you get a Snickers bar or not.
I think to boil this down to just insurgent versus establishment overlooks what many of these people are running on. They're simply beyond insurgency here. You've got people out there winning primaries that want to abolish borders, abolish ICE, abolish prisons, abolish the police, abolish the United States Senate. This is well outside the bounds of normal political discourse, and it's all happening, in the Democratic Party. I don't think the Democratic Party leadership understands they've already been overwhelmed, and it's just a matter of time before these views become the mainstream platform, and that's what they're going to end up running on in 2028 as well. I think to boil this down to just insurgent versus establishment overlooks what many of these people are running on. They're simply beyond insurgency here. You've got people out there winning primaries that want to abolish borders, abolish ICE, abolish prisons, abolish the police, abolish the United States Senate. This is well outside the bounds of normal political discourse, and it's all happening in the Democratic Party. I don't think the Democratic Party leadership understands they've already been overwhelmed, and it's just a matter of time before these views become the mainstream platform, and that's what they're going to end up running on in 2028 as well. I think to boil this down to just insurgent versus establishment overlooks what many of these people are running on. They're simply beyond insurgency here. You've got people out there winning primaries that want to.
Yeah, it's quite messed up. I accidentally played that video a little bit longer, but it makes sense. It's unbelievable that people who are for abolishing the police are winning elections. That's terrible. Obviously crime is going to increase dramatically. And here we see the results of what happens when you get socialists in charge. New York has fallen apart, just like Seattle did a few years ago, and has continued to, as so many people have left. Seattle is losing thousands of jobs every month. Ever since CHOP and the homeless people took over downtown Seattle, it really has, a few years ago, it really hasn't gotten any better. Now the same thing's happening to New York. It says residents are furious as homeless encampments are surging in Ugandan Mayor Mamdani's New York City after he hindered police's ability to clear them. Brutal failure.
Are looking like Skid Row. thanks to Mamdani's policy, which bans police from clearing homeless encampments until a week after outreach workers step in. Drug dealers and thieves are operating in broad daylight, and while Mamdani says, hey, it's going to be cleared, he just can't say when. Instead of cleaning up the streets, Mamdani is still focused on arresting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu when he comes to visit New York in September. Are looking like Skid Row. Thanks to Mamdani's
it's looking
policy.
bad. It's looking really bad. New York is falling apart. It's unfortunate that these extreme leftists get control of American cities and then run them into the ground. Historic American cities that people have come and visited to, people have legally migrated to for years. Now it's just too many illegals and homeless people that are ruining the city. So, anyways, thanks for watching this far. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. It's all a great help. Have a fantastic day.